Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we shall discuss the reforms that transformed China. I have titled the video Dragon's Rise, a brief journey of reforms that transformed China. So as you can see, centuries ago and centuries past, China was a dominant force in economic trade, in world economy, from the Silk Route to the invention of paper, to silk, to tea. China was a world leader. But over certain period in history, China lost its strength. The dragon dipped in water. And for the last 30-40 years, we can see it rise again. You can also say it a phoenix rising from the ashes, which is a very dramatic conceptualization of China. There is also concerns with the Chinese growth, which is led by a very authoritarian, oppressive regime. But keeping aside the politics of the region, I will focus on the reforms. Reforms, what are the particular reforms that China undertook that transformed into a rising star? And rising star, I mean, it is one of the two blocks of superpower today. So let's look at these stats from the World Bank. These are 2020-22 data. If you can zoom in, and let's zoom in and look at the five biggest economies of the world. They're not ordered in the rank wise, so you can look at the number. So we have United States leading the block with 25.44 trillion US dollars of GDP. Then you have China, which is leading behind, which is the second largest economy in the world, and that is trailing at 17.96 trillion dollars. And then you can have Japan with 4.28, Germany and India at 3.42 trillion dollars worth of economy. What is remarkable here is if you even sum total these three economies of the world, from the bottom three, these three largest economies of the world, you are nowhere near China. And 100 years back, if you can compare India with China, they were almost same in their other factors, per capita poverty. And for today, you can see China is the second biggest economy in the world, and it has transformed itself from a poverty ridden poor state to a state of the art innovator and world's manufacturing hub, as you can see. So what led to this dramatic shift in the Chinese economy? And these lessons that will take from the reforms are of most importance for the developing economies aspiring to be like China. This is the period when China changed. Yes, this is the period after which China changed. I can say there was a pre 1978 China and there was a post 1978 China. And these two Chinas looked different. And why so? We'll take a look in a while. So, in the economic literature, you will find 1978 as a period when we can say there was a structural reform in the Chinese economy, and the perception and the way Chinese economy was run. The ideology, there was an ideological shift too in the Chinese economy, and in a while we'll see. But this is a golden year that you all can think of as a point from which the Chinese economy pivoted into what it is today. So, for any developing economy, there is always an aspiration to become a developed economy. Isn't so? For any developing economy, they all aspire to become a developed economy. So for a developed economy, while you can say that even a growth rate of 1% or 2% is remarkable, but when you say a growth rate of even 6% for a developing economy, which might seem to you is very high, but this might seem very dismal. which might seem very dismal for a developing economy. So for a developing economy usually need a very high rate of growth for them to grow. It usually turns out to be 9%, 10% growth rate, which really seems like bonkers to grow at, but this is what it takes to turn into a developed economy. So even if a developed economy grows at a 0% growth rate, they term it as a fantastic growth rate. There's a whole lot of literature to explain why it is so, and if you would like me to explain it, please comment down below. I'll be happy to explain. So I have brought forward for you certain statistics from the IMF, which will give you the taste of why we have taken 1978 as the date when the Chinese economy pivoted. So pre 1978, I have some statistics for you, and post 1978, I have some statistics for you. Pre 1978, China was growing at 6% per annum. Yes, fairly to say, it is a good growth rate, but it is not a growth rate which will take you to a developed economy status in a very short period of time, right? So it was growing at 6%, but post 1978, China was growing at I mean, real growth rate. And real growth means it is adjusted for inflation. It was growing at 9%, and at peak years it was also growing at 13%. And the ups and downs, the upheavals, the impediments to the economy were also less. In this period, the impediments to the economy were very high. So this is a very remarkable growth for the Chinese economy. So you can see pre 1978, China was growing at an annual growth of 6% a year. Post 1978, China saw a real growth of more than 9%, and in several peak years, it was 13%. And China is today described as the manufacturing workshop of the world. But you should be aware that manufacturing, China for of late was involved lot in assembly work. So they used to join together the parts, like in the Legos, you join together part and make fourth thing. They used to do this, and assembly work is usually seen as low skilled, labor intensive work, and so China was involved a lot in this kind of manufacturing work, and thus its value addition to a product was very low. So the value addition manufacturing which China indulged in was very low. It was actually very high in Taiwan, South Korea, and those kind of economies. But of late, China has shifted from this low skill to high skill manufacturing. High skill manufacturing, and what do I mean by this? It's like making chips. This is electronics. This is high skill manufacturing, and low skill manufacturing is, for example, you are assembling toys, something like that is a low skill labor intensive manufacturing world. So again, there is again we can have a very healthy discussion on the manufacturing, type of manufacturing that China undertakes, but this video is not about the manufacturing sector of China, but rather on the reforms. So what are the forces behind the boom? We have seen that China post 1978, mind you, was growing at more than 9%, and at peak years it was growing at 13%. So I can say that this is the band at which China was growing, from 9 to 13%. So what are the forces behind this boom? So the IMF state one force. Okay, before IMF, I would like you to draw some conclusions. There are certain conclusions or certain inferences from, rather than conclusions, I would like to say certain inferences from growth models. There are certain growth models, there are inferences, and certain endogenous growth models. They say that an economy can grow, one, by either producing more. Okay, so what do I mean by this producing more? Say you can produce more and more of cycles, you can produce more and more of cheese, and that's how your economy will grow. And second idea from the growth models that we infer is that if your productivity increases, right, then also your economy will grow. What do I mean by this is, say in one day earlier you were able to produce only 10 cycles, but now because of your increased efficiency, increased productivity, in one day you are able to produce 11 cycles. So this is what we call by productivity. There are productivity also mean by the production of more ideas. There is more innovation and research. Better methods of producing cycles can also lead to growth in productivity and thus growth in economy. So what are the forces behind the Chinese boom? One is that there was capital accumulation. There was growth in the country's stock of capital asset. What I mean by this, the number of factories were increasing in this period. Even number of labors was also increasing. So this is what we known as capital was accumulating, and that led to growth in the Chinese economy. Then second reason for increase is the most important reason was increase in productivity. So what do IMF state is that yes, the growth did come from capital accumulation. Growth was coming from these two forces. One is capital accumulation and the other was productivity. So what did IMF say? That yes, growth did come from capital accumulation, but in this pie of growth, right, the share of productivity was higher. So the growth was coming more from the productivity part rather than capital accumulation. So because productivity grew at a very increased pace, that's why there was growth. So this is actually very remarkable. And productivity, mind you, does not mean that you are able to produce more in a shorter span of time. It also means that you are more efficient, you have better ideas, you are more innovative, there is research and development in your economy. This is all what is known by productivity. So there was increase in worker efficiency. Again, giving you the statistics, pre 1978, and we can have post 1978. So pre 1978 the worker efficiency was increasing at 1.1% per annum, but post 1978 it was growing at 3.9% per annum, which is roughly your 4%. And if I compare it with the US productivity growth rate, US productivity growth rate was just 0.4% in this period. Isn't it remarkable? So this is what it is written here. The Chinese productivity increased at an annual rate of 3.9% during 1979. This is your post-reform period. And when you compare it with 1.1% during 1953-78, and US productivity growth rate averaged at 0.4%. So this is how remarkable growth was in China. Now, the reforms which I've taken the reforms. I've tried to explain this. The next excerpts are from the book Awakening Giants, Feet of Clay, Assessing the Economic Rise of China and India by Pranab Bardhan. And I've taken the content from chapter 2 of the book, which is the economic reform and growth differing pattern in institutions. So this chapter actually talks about the growth structures of both China and India, and I've taken out the growth structure of the reform of the China. So we can divide the Chinese reform into three classes. First is there were reform in the household responsibility system. Then there were these township and village enterprise reform. And then there were reform in state-owned enterprises. So firstly, let's look at the household responsibility system. So this kind of reform, you can call it, this is somewhat of an agricultural reform. So what happened? they reallocated they reallocated the collective agriculture. I'm sorry. They reallocated the collective agricultural land to individual rural household. So there was a attempt at decollectivization. So earlier they used to make a commune, and then all of them would produce on the same piece of land of same commune, and then the produce was taken out into the markets and whatever. But now there was decollectivization. Now everybody had their own piece of land again. So what it did, and they were subject to sub taxes. So you have your own piece of land, will tax you, and then will procure some part, and the rest, whatever is remaining after you give it to me, I mean the government, you can sell in the market. Now because there is an incentive to sell in the market, so what this decollectivization did, it gave them autonomy over the land use decision and crop selection. Because the piece of land is theirs, now they have greater autonomy how they want to use it and what kind of crop they want to grow on it. And what happened for the non-agricultural sector, say poultry and stuff, there was same principle that applied in the agricultural sector. So you would give away certain contractual delivery to the state. You will say give away 2-3 hens to the state, and the rest 10-15 hens, whichever is remaining, you are able to sell it in the market. So after, apart from some contractual delivery to the state and industrial and commercial enterprises, whatever the residual is, you are in control of it, which was not possible earlier when there was collectivization of the land. I'll want to give you certain statistics for the household and responsibility. It is very interesting. And also this part, the autonomy over the land use decision, it gave the farmers incentives. Because whatever is remaining, now they can sell in the market. And it gave farmers the incentive, because of which the production increased production. Okay, so let's now focus on certain statistics of growth in agricultural output of agriculture. So 1970 to 78, and I'm taking 1979 and 84 as the period. 1978, the growth was 2.7% per annum. And this period, post reform period, growth rate was 7.1% per annum. Isn't it remarkable? There are certain parts I would like to cover in the other video. Okay guys, bye bye, thank you.